Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Angus,
And my name is Dan.
and we're back to review Game Week 18. Unfortunately, Jamie can't be with us this evening, as you've probably noticed, but the two of us will talk you through the all the action from Game Week 18 and then answer the questions that you've sent us on Twitter. So, start off with Dan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Angus. A decent point against Sunderland. We'll get into that later on. Gaffr wise, pretty eventful week. Obviously, planning for follow the leader in 20. I got 60 minus 4, which was a 9 place green arrow. Pretty happy because I my transfers were Saar and Dykes in for Pookie, who obviously scored, and I can't remember who else I took out. Oh, Field. That's why I don't know who it is. He's irrelevant. I had to get Field out because QPR are going to be one of my three teams to follow leader. So captain Saar for 6 points, vice captain Victor for one. He got benched due to illness. Um, I had Wilson 3, Giles 1, Bree 7, Omahedvich 5, Chair 5, NDI the big one 16, Brownhill 4, Dykes 2, obviously missed a penalty, and McBurney finally returned for me for 10 points. So considering I sold Pookie for hit, um, captain and vice captain blank, I'm quite happy to get a small green arrow of 9 places.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's certainly like you say. I don't think there were major moves this weekend. I think in some ways, particularly from my point of view, it wasn't the worst weekend to have a not great weekend. Gaffer wise, I ended up on 52 minus 4. I had Wilson, Powell for 3, Bree for 7, Kamara for 6, Captain Blank from Saar 6 because he only had the clean sheet point. Chair was my vice captain, which was 7. Brownhill and Teller, 4 and 2. Um, I brought in Dykes as part of a minus 4 as well for Sargent, which was annoying with the missed penalty, but net I mean it's still sort of effectively minus 2, but with Sargent not playing, that felt less sort of bad to come Saturday. I bought João Pedro as well, who got 11, and then I have Victor, who obviously came off the bench for 1. So that was a 9 place red arrow for me, down to 27th, but particularly after the lunchtime kickoff with not having Njai and realizing how many people had Njai, it was sort of like actually um, it was fewer people than I thought, which was good, but I knew I was then going to take a red arrow, barring something dramatic from my players. I would like to point out the sickening thing of there were 10 people that owned Ndiaye in the top 25. 4 of them benched him. All 4 of them got him off the bench. So
It,
that,
we we've mentioned before about NDI and his he either hauls or gets one or
yeah,
two. So yeah, I can understand why people do Ben. I just play him every week because you'll miss out if you don't sometimes.
yeah. I mean, I think in fairness, a few of those people looking at their teams, they had significant benching headaches. And when you look at least theoretically at him against West Brom, I can understand why you're like, oh, I'll bench him this week. Um, you've clearly forgotten how bad West Brom are, but we'll get into that in the game. Um, just round off with the pod team. 61 minus 4 this week. We had Johansson in goal, Giles and Jones for 1 apiece. Bree and Kamara, Chair vice captain, Star captain. We had Njai. We also had Jack Clark for 9, Dykes 2, Victor 1. We had Sargent, who obviously then auto subbed out. We also had Collins 8 on the bench. But that was a green arrow. The pod team is at 318th now.
Not too bad.
So, yeah, not too bad there. But we'll get into the games. So the first game that we're going to review, we've mentioned already, is West Brom 0, Sheffield United 2. So Dan, kick us off on this one.
Yeah, so this was the first game with Corberán in charge. It was interesting to see what formation he stuck with the 3-4-3 that they had sort of played since I think it's the Luton game. I'm not sure he got it tactically right. You're playing basically two centre mids against Sheffield United, who are one of the best teams in the league. You're going to get outdone in centre mid, and I think that's what happened. They also had Furlong and Peters sort of playing centre backs, which I don't know. They need to get some centre backs. I just look at the team and they just don't. Just doesn't look as good as what it should do. Swift was still on the bench. They played Grant up front with Wallace and Diangana in behind. And this match was all mainly about Sheffield United. They brought back in NDI and McBurney after benching. You've got to play NDI every week. He's their best player by far. But overall, their squad's just looking a lot more better. A few weeks ago, they had a lot of kids on the bench, but it's near enough a full professional 18 now. And then getting into the game, NDI got on a goal and an assist. McBurney also scored. And yeah, it's West Brom. I bet Corberán can't wait for the World Cup because he needs some time with these players. And we keep saying you look on paper and their team's good, but they're just not getting it. It's obvious they need to play a 4-2-3-1, and they keep trying 5 at the back and things like that. And I know you mentioned about Sante when he came on. You thought he offered more than Grant did for the time he was on, and I mentioned when Luton played him, he caused Bradley a lot of problems. So yeah, West Brom are just a massive avoid at the minute. Sheffield United I think they've become a lot more interesting. I was already on them because of how my team was set up. And now Ahmed Hodvic done his duty this week, getting his 5th yellow card. So he's missing game week 19, so he can play the double. Like I said, I'm already set up for them. What do you think about Sheffield United, mainly Angus, as they're the one who's doubling in game week 20?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a good option. I think they've got good fixtures, and I think there are.
They got Burnley.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily the worst fixture. Look at this, but it's not necessarily the best fixture. But I tend to back them at the moment. I think they're a good team. We've talked about the squad they're getting back. Even players that we don't think of as being outstanding players. The likes of Jack Robinson, the likes of Ender Stevens, just solid pros that can play the position. You're not relying on kids. You're not relying on forcing people like Ben Osborne, who will do a good job playing out of position, but you're not forcing him to play out of position. You're not forcing Reda Kadra to play out of position. So I think that will help them. And I think to varying degrees, they've got assets throughout the team. I've talked numerous times this season about Ahmed Hodzic. I'm not sure I need to say much more about him. You've got a really solid option in someone like John Egan, who's a set piece threat but will play every game. Baldock, I think, is doing a decent enough job at right wing back at the moment. I thought Doyle was good, but I wouldn't necessarily go for him. And then you've got the two up top, and Njai and McBurney. I think the one thing with Njai is every so often he will have a game on the bench, because we saw last season that he would pick up these odd injuries and be out for a few weeks. And I think Heckingbottom is looking at it this season and thinking, if I put him on the bench, every so often and bring him off the bench, and that's what stops us missing him for like 3-4 weeks, it's worth it. I wouldn't stress out about that in terms of buying him, like that there'll be the odd game that he's on the bench. I wouldn't worry about that. He's so good that it's not a problem. I mean, look, if this game had been the only game he played in a double, he's got you 16 points. If you went into the double and Njai got you 16 points, you'd be happy with that. So that's the other thing with him, is like not to worry about that. McBurney, we've talked about in terms of him doing well. We've also talked quite a bit about his injury issue. He's got this hernia issue, which he's going to have surgery on during the World Cup, and he's playing through at the moment.
Because there was an incident in the first 10 minutes where I thought he was going to go off because he was sort of limping. I was like, oh no.
Yeah. I know at least once Heckingbottom has sort of said he might not play, but before that he said, now that they've arranged for him to have surgery on it during the World Cup, they feel much more secure about playing him sort of a lot of minutes in this period, knowing that he'll then get it sorted afterwards. So I wouldn't worry about it too much with him either, because I think he's another one also, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he was on the bench for one of the two, but we've seen him in multiple games this season have an impact coming off the bench, and like he'll come off the bench in the game he doesn't start. It's almost a guarantee, particularly now Rhian Brewster seems to have done his hamstring again. I mean, poor guy, like he just can't catch a break. But yeah, on the West Brom side, the other thing I wanted to add was I was sort of looking into this at one point because I was trying to work out sort of what they were doing. And it looked from the average positions like they were playing more of a 4-2-3-1. Because Phillips was very high on the right, and Furlong was sort of way out on the right-hand side. So I think almost even worse, they appear to be playing a back four with Eric Peters playing centre-back in a back four, which is not something you want to be doing. The midfield just didn't really work of Livermore and Gardner-Hickman. I think that was part of the problem. I think the thing for Corberan is he looked like a manager who'd only had a few days with the team. So there was only so much he could do there. I can see why you pick someone like Matt Phillips. He's someone who will always put a shift in for the team. The nicest thing I can say about Matt Phillips is he tries hard. He's one of these players where he's basically crafted a career out of working hard. He's not a terrible player, but he's not very good. He's not very good technically. Like, he just works hard, and so people will like managers like that sort of player who will always reliably put in a shift. The John Swift going back to the bench thing was interesting. He immediately made a difference when he came on, so it wouldn't surprise me if he was back in the team soon. And as you said, I was commenting on Thomas Asante. I think when I was watching the latter stages, I think you were on your way to Luton, and I was sort of saying that the massive difference he made. You could say it over Grant, you could say it over any number of the attackers. He just added extra energy, extra impetus, extra sort of go forward when he came on the pitch, and I would expect to see his minutes tick back up again based on that, because particularly what Corberan will look for, I can see him liking someone like Thomas Asante. But yeah, West Brom avoid Sheffield United. We've covered their assets quite a bit, and they do have 2 home games in the double, so I'm sure they'll appeal to quite a lot of people. The next game we've got is Norwich 3, Stoke 1. This is clearly why Jamie couldn't make the pod. No, the interesting thing was obviously no Josh Sargent. There'd been the comment sort of thrown out there by Dean Smith in the press conference about how they would monitor this calf problem. He's had it for the last few weeks, but he's sort of been playing through it. So clearly it had just reached a point where he needed sort of a game off, essentially. I don't know whether he'll be back for the midweek game. I haven't seen anything yet in terms of the severity. But Dean Smith made quite sweeping changes. I think he had 6 changes for this game. Onel Hernandez came into the starting lineup. Dowell came back into the starting lineup. Aarons was on the bench. I know that helped a few people in terms of bench points, but there was an issue. It turned out in I think the midweek game with dizziness for him, and so I think he was just left out as a precaution. I mean, he was on the bench, but he was an unused sub, and I think it was precautionary. Although I do think he's been struggling recently, so it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if it turned out to be on some level performance related. Maybe just to give him a kick up the arse in terms of, reminding him that anyone is droppable. The story, I guess, was Aaron Ramsey getting 2 goals. One of them, he was just in the right place at the right time to score the rebound after Teemu Pukki's shot was saved, and then he linked up well with Pukki for his second goal. Sara with a tap in again on a rebound for the third goal. Nick Powell got a goal in added time, so him sort of back in the action. I know he's come off the bench previously, but back amongst the goals would be sort of something to keep an eye on. For Norwich, like I said, until we have clarity on Sargent, I can't really give any advice on selling him. Hopefully, I mean, Dean Smith is quite good, generally speaking, on giving sort of pre-match information almost on the injury situation for the team. So hopefully we'll have something before their game in midweek. Pukki is still a perfectly good option. He's going to tick over. He's going to get you returns. I'm not sure I'd want to have him in the double, because obviously I'd be looking to have all doublers, and Norwich only have a single game, although it is against Rotherham. So if people wanted to, for example, for those playing follow the leader, if you had 9 outfield players, say, as your follow the leader, and your other player was Teemu Pukki, it's not necessarily the worst option. We talked about with some of the boosts last year about having, all the players plus Mitrovic. Pukki isn't quite in the territory that Mitrovic was last year, but he seems to be in a really good vein of form, and I do think that I wouldn't do it because I just like the opportunity of 2 games, but I wouldn't say that someone is stupid for still wanting to play Pukki against Rotherham in 20. Otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily panic about Aarons unless we hear something more from Dean Smith. For example, if he says no, he's been dropped or something, then obviously that's a concern. But I'd wait and see on that. From the Stoke side, I'm not sure how much we need to cover Stoke, really. I mean, I mentioned the key thing, which was Nick Powell came off the bench and got a goal.
There's only going to be one person who's got them on their follow the leader.
Yeah, and even then, one of Jamie's Stoke players was Tyrese Campbell, who wasn't even in the squad. They still seem to be searching for something. I saw that apparently Will Smallbone played quite well, but yeah, they seem to have settled more on this 4-2-3-1 now, which I think will be better for them going forward. It's just about how those sort of players all fit together. In this game, it was sort of Jacob Brown on the right and Tarek Fosu on the left. Smallbone, the more advanced midfielder, and Dwight Gale up front. It'll be interesting to see sort of, obviously Powell came off the bench, Delap came off the bench, Campbell, how that all fits together, whether there's a lot of rotation or whether Neil sort of settles on a particular sort of preferred 3/4 up top. But I've already spoken more about Stoke than I intended to. Do you have anything to add on these sides?
No, I think you covered it. I'll probably get rid of Aaron's just to fund a defender for QPR and Watford probably.
So we'll go on to our next game, which was the Friday night game, Birmingham 2, QPR 0, just like we all predicted. Dan, talk us through this one.
Yeah, as you mentioned, 2-0 to Birmingham. For Birmingham, Deeney and Hannibal came back into the side. Bakun had dropped out. QPR, Roberts started, but still no Willock. I was really impressed with Birmingham. I haven't seen too much of them. Obviously, you see the highlights, but you can't really judge them. Luton played Birmingham first game of the season, and they didn't have Chong, Hannibal, Bielik, and to be honest, they basically hung on for a draw, and the only way they looked like scoring was from a set piece. But they were a lot more dynamic. They had a lot more ability to travel with the ball, especially with Chong and Hannibal. And I thought QPR was quite average in this game. Obviously, they had a few chances they created. They will do with Chair in the side, but Roberts went off injured during the half. So young Armstrong had to come on, and they just I do worry about the lack of depth. They also Clark Salter also went off, so I think Dunn and Salter are out at the minute. So yeah, it was 2-0 Birmingham. QPR did get the penalty late on. Dykes missed it. So that's 2 missed penalties in 2 game weeks for me. I'm currently on Chair and Dykes. I'm going to add either Laird or Power, I think, to that, and they will be my team. They've got Huddersfield and West Brom, so I'm quite optimistic about that. I think Birmingham could be interesting. The odd player maybe after the game week 20. Anything else on QPR, Angus?
Not really. I mean, there was the comments after the game from Beale about how Willock he was left out of the squad because he wanted to give him the extra few days. Although he did have to risk Roberts, who then went off injured. Some people would argue that wasn't necessarily a loss, him going off the pitch. I don't know what the penalty situation will be now because Dykes has a pretty good record on them, but has obviously missed this one. So for those hoping that Chair might be on the penalties, I don't know. I thought they struggled a bit in this game. I'm on 3 of them. It doesn't necessarily scare me. I joked about sort of selling all of them for Birmingham players, but I'm not actually going to do that. Obviously, Birmingham I thought were decent. We decided that I sort of gave them the perfect description on Friday when I said they're a pain in the arse to play.
Yeah.
I think that's particularly at home. That's like they're just going to make the game difficult for everyone they play. I think it was, what was it, all of their players are either under 24 or over 30. So you sort of got the energy. They've done well in the loan market in terms of there's some quality there, but it's energy and experience throughout the team. And I think that shows in terms of they're well organised. There's going to be plenty of games where they lose because they're overmatched or whatever, but they're well organised. And they've got some good quality there. The other thing I would add on them is Hannibal was very lucky not to get a second yellow, and I think it was actually really good management from Eustace, where as soon as that he got away with that one foul, Eustace was like, right, you're off. And I think he recognised they probably got away with one there. And so, but yeah, I know a few people had Ruddy, although I think quite a number of those benched him. So, but I don't think he's the worst option to have, particularly at his price. So obviously not. Well, I mean, you could go with him for the double, particularly if you're not looking to include the goalkeeper as part of your follow the leader. I think he's perfectly fine to have 20. But yeah, I think you're not necessarily going to be piling into them for 20. I think they have a decent-ish run on the other side, so they might be interesting to some people. QPR, I wouldn't worry too much. If you're on the likes of Laird, Powell, Chair, Dykes, Willock will be a tough one, particularly if people are looking at having him for 20. It remains to be seen how much game time he gets in midweek, really. But otherwise, yeah, not too much sort of else to say there, I don't think. No. So we'll move on to our next game, which is Burnley 2, Reading 1. This seemed to be sort of interesting. Burnley sort of struggled, I think, to get through Reading, despite having a lot of the ball. It sounded like Reading were sort of well organised, and Burnley sort of did their thing of having a lot of the ball, but they struggled to sort of get through Reading, who did actually take the lead through Tom Ince. It's quite funny because they were talking about it on Soccer Saturday, but the Burnley fans were sort of making a lot of noise about how long Joe Lumley was taking to release the ball. And as they were doing that, he sort of released it long. Mate flicks it on, Ince is in and finishes it. And it's sort of like, well, he released the ball. They did get 2 goals. Benson came off the bench and scored again. And Zaruri, who's been in really good form, got a goal to win it in the 94th minute.
Yeah, 3 goals and assists last 5.
Yeah, and it was Benson with the assist for Zaruri as well. Obviously, a lot of people will still be on Burnley assets from the double in 17. I think it'll be interesting to see what people decide to do, because particularly if you're looking to move defenders in and out for follow the leader in 20, for example, Burnley defenders are an obvious one to sell. For those on Roberts, Vitinho, or Matson, or Harwood Bellis, seen all of them around. You're probably looking at a game week 20 sell, given that they're at home against Rotherham in game week 19. Josh Brownhill, he's played deeper the last couple of games to cover for Cullen being injured, and then Cullen was still out and Jack Cork was suspended. So hopefully he'll go sort of back further forward soon. Obviously Cork will come back into the team because that was just a yellow card suspension. Cullen, it depends sort of how close he is, but in terms of the attackers, I mean, Goodmanson started again. Burnley fans will tell you it's only a matter of time before he gets injured. I have Teller. He didn't really do anything again. As you mentioned, Zaruri is probably the most interesting one at the moment. Seems to be in a real run of form. The problem is they have a single in 20 away against Sheffield United. So I don't think you're going to be looking at them, and you're probably going to be looking to sell at this point. Reading, another sort of solid performance. It sounded like they were a bit unlucky to lose. I mean, obviously, when you concede a 94th minute
Yeah.
winner, you're unlucky to lose. I mean, they also had a very strong argument for a penalty. Vincent Kompany even acknowledged, yeah, that's a penalty. I thought it was quite funny when he said, "There's not much I can say to Paul Ince to make him feel better about the fact that it was a penalty." But yeah, I'm not sure. Aside from Ince, I'm not sure there's many you'd be looking at. I think those who have Tom Ince, it's not the worst option, like as an extra player in 20 when we're talking about sort of other player. They play
Yeah.
Preston at home and Watford away, which aren't great games, but like, he's shown even in some of the tougher games he's got returns. So I don't hate the idea of him being sort of people's other outfield player in 20, but I wouldn't necessarily be looking at anyone else from Reading. I don't know if you have anything else to add on these two teams, Dan.
No, I am a bit like you said. Brownhill is playing deeper, and that is a bit of cause for concern. No, I know Cork will come in back
Yeah,
in, but um, they played Bastion with Brownhill. Well, you just think Bastion will drop out
yeah,
for Cork, and Brownhill will stay. So, although I've got Brownhill, I think he'll probably stay, but he might he might move out maybe if he continues playing deeper with those other attacking options for Burnley. Probably not the best option.
yeah. Although obviously that none of them are going to move out ahead of 19 when they're, well, certainly
Oh
not
yeah,
him
yeah,
against Rotherham. Um, it all sort of depends on Collins' sort of injury status, really,
yeah,
which hopefully we'll get an update on again. But we'll move on to our next game, which is Coventry 1, Blackpool 2. So Dan, talk to us about this one.
yeah. So it was a bit of a shock lineup when it was announced, and no striker started for Coventry. I think they were playing Casey Palmer up front. Um, Victor was on the bench. Good news though, O'Hare did start. Um, he was, I think he was going to be everyone's main midfielder going into the season, and
Yeah,
he never started the first game against Sunderland. Blackpool, Carey was in for bridge cut. Otherwise, it was unchanged. Um, I don't really have too much to say about this one. Blackpool won 2-1. Jerry Yates again with another goal. I think he's top goal scorer now with 9.
yeah,
7 in 5 for Jerry Yates.
yeah.
You did mention him, Angus.
Yes.
Didn't bring him in though.
No. No. It's one of those for me where I sort of tipped him up as a potential option. Other people went with him and have got lots of points from him, and some of them have surpassed me or moved further ahead of me by having Jerry Yates. So all credit to them for going with him. Um, like you say, I
What,
think
what's your
the main thing from this is probably the fact that A, Victor was on the bench, but B, it was just illness and he should be fine.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I know a lot of people. Coventry are one of the teams where people are looking to play just because they have
Yeah,
2 or 3 players, and they do have doubles
yeah,
afterwards. I don't hate it. I think I'd take a punt on O'Hare if I was going to play it.
yeah. I think
I
I think
think
if you're
he'll.
going Coventry, I would go O'Hare. I'd take the punt on him.
Yeah,
He's since coming back or returning to action. He's won a penalty that in midweek that was the equaliser, and he's got an assist in this one. So yeah, I'd probably look to go with him. The other thing I guess we should say, because there's been a lot of speculation about where they'll be playing their games. tied up in particularly the Wasps ownership going into administration. That covers the company that owns the stadium as well. They, I think, are in talks with Walsall about a ground share agreement, and I wouldn't worry too much about it if you're on Coventry players, because the EFL are highly motivated to help Coventry find a solution to this. So, I don't think there'll be any issue in terms of them fulfilling their games or anything like that. So, but it's just worth updating people on. But I don't think it'll be a problem. On the Blackpool side, Jerry Yates, sure. I mean, Gary Medine was on the score sheet again as well. He's been doing quite well. The two of them have been doing quite well. And if we're talking about sort of other players, because again, you're not going to play follow the leader on Blackpool, but I think it's perfectly fine to have Jerry Yates as sort of your other outfield player.
Yeah,
he does have a double, and he's in red hot form. So
yeah, it's worrying considering one of the games are against Luton.
yeah. So I think he's one that's perfectly fine to play as sort of one of your other players, but you're obviously not going to be looking to play follow the leader on them. So there's not much else to say on them. So we'll move on. Preston 2, Middlesbrough 1. So obviously this was Michael Carrick's first game in charge. It all looked to be going so well. And after 7 minutes, Chuba Akpom put them ahead. It almost looked to be sort of a 4-4-2, a 4-3-3, bit of a hybrid, I think. Jones got high up the pitch on the right. I think McGree tucked in a little bit more. Muniz and Akpom both played in the attack. But then sort of they conceded the equaliser, really good finish by Emil Rees. And then right at the end, Story got a goal in added time to win the game for Preston. So obviously not a great start for Carrick. I guess there've been some encouraging signs, because obviously the change of system of the last two games, I think a lot of people think has been down to Carrick, who's been around the club for the last couple of weeks, even though he wasn't in charge. But, it's more dropped points. They're still down near the bottom of the table. I know quite a few people are looking at them for follow the leader, particularly those who are still on Jones and Giles. We talked about it last time. I guess the first place to start. What are your thoughts on that? People still looking to play follow the leader on Middlesbrough.
I wouldn't be that excited. We're looking to play it in the pod team.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not going to be ideal, is it?
No. It's just the third player. Who do you get? Like, I'm not even convinced with Giles now. He's playing left
I think
back.
that, I flagged it sort of when they made this change of system, that part of the problem then was it was great for Jones playing higher up the pitch, but worse for Giles because he's now playing as an orthodox left back in a back four. Although it did sound like he was close to returning on a few occasions with the set piece delivery, so that's something that I would sort of think about there. I mean, initially I think it was the Middlesbrough Twitter account said that the corner had gone straight through to Akpom. Turned out it had been flicked on by Lenihan, but they did go close from his deliveries a couple of times as well. So maybe he's still an option, but again, like you say, I'd probably be less confident about it now.
And then obviously Brady came back into the side and played on the right wing by the looks of it. So way I'll probably keep him another couple. I think he's sellable though now.
Yeah. I think with the uncertainty over his spot, I think it's certainly one you can sell at this point. He's come back in having been on the bench for the last two. You don't really, he doesn't have a double. So yeah, I think he's sellable at this point. Reese with another goal after I sold him, but again, they have no double, so I wouldn't really be looking to own him at this point either. So we'll move on. The next game we've got is Wigan 0, Watford 1. So Dan, kick us off on this one. Any thoughts?
Yes, not many. Wigan may use Amos not in the squad, so whether that was back spasms or another reason, I don't know. I'm just glad I wasn't playing 10 men. Watford, Cathcart and Davis weren't in the squads. Sierralta and Bayo came in. Watford won it at the end through João Pedro. Sarr missed the chance first half, straight at the keeper. Apart from that, I think they struggled really to break Wigan down by the sounds of it. Although Watford are going to be one of the three teams with their double, probably going to be the most popular team. I've already got Sarr, brought him in this week. Plan is to either get Pedro or Davis and Kamara, but he's part of this group on what seems to be an ever-growing number of players on 4 cards. So it's just whether you want to take the gamble. What's your thoughts between Pedro and Davis and then Kamara?
Well, Davis, judging by Bilic's comments before this game, should be back for the game week 19 game in midweek. So if you haven't made the striker move already, it's probably worth waiting to see what happens in midweek.
Yeah.
I like João Pedro. I bought him this week. He scored me a goal. That's always nice. I think he's got that extra bit of quality. I know Davis has done well at this level. I know he did well against Luton sort of last week. But I think personally, I decided to go with the extra quality of Pedro. I just think he's just a better player, and that's not even a slight on Davis. I think Pedro's a really good player.
He will if they both play though, he will drop a bit deeper than.
Yes, he will be in a deeper role, which is the one sort of issue there, and is the one sort of drawback. And the main thing I think in Davis's favour is if they both play, Davis will lead the line. Sarr is the given, and then I think it's about. I mean, some people will be on Sema. Don't hate that. I think that's perfectly fine. No. Kamara, obviously. I mean, I've got Kamara. He's on 4 yellows. I was really hoping he'd get booked at the weekend. He didn't. I know a couple of people have mentioned Sierralta as a potential option. He's on 4 yellows, so same sort of problem there. I'll probably go with Kamara unless he gets booked in midweek. If he gets booked in midweek, I'll probably just move sideways from him. And I'd go to Trostekong because he's the only reliable one to play otherwise.
They're still playing Dan Gosling at right back.
Yes. I think that might get phased out soon. Gaspar seems to sort of be coming on sort of reliably, and I think it balances the side better, so I think they'll probably change that soon. But yeah, so hopefully that sort of helps people. I mean, obviously it depends on Davis's status, but there's probably a decision for people to make there, unless people just want to go sort of like a defender, Sarr and Sema. But I'd probably look to get one of the forwards in personally. Wigan, yeah, I guess you covered the main thing, which was Amos, but we don't have anything on him yet. They do have a double, but I wouldn't be. I know a couple of people are including them actually, just to cover them briefly. I know, for example, Martin from the Man On podcast, I think is going to go in with Wigan players. Yeah, they're a doubling team. I don't necessarily love their fixtures, but if you still have them in, and so it means you're taking sort of fewer hits, it might be worth it. But if you're looking at
Well, if that
who to get in, I wouldn't be rushing to Wigan.
no,
Because I guess it would be Keane, Watmore, and whoever else you've got. Although if that's Amos, that might be a problem now.
yeah,
But we'll move on. And the next game we've got is Luton 1, Sunderland 1. So I know in terms of the pattern, I'd be kicking us off on this one. But since you went to the game, you can talk just about this one.
yeah. So the main news with Lansbury and Potts were over their illness, so they came back into the side. Bree played right centre back because Bradley dropped out. He's been struggling with an injury. And Doughty, who's normally a left back, left winger, played right wing back. Sunderland, big news was probably who was on the bench. Sims was finally back, so they finally had a striker. Roberts was also on the bench. Just a really good game to watch. It was pretty much end to end. Sunderland, pretty much what I thought they would be. They're not great at the back, but they're very good going forward. A lot of players who are good carrying the ball, quick, nippy 1-2s. Clark, Pritchard, Diallo. Morris, another goal, 8th of the season. He's part of the 4 yellow card club. So is Adebayo. He picked up his 4th yellow card, so not ideal. And second half, Sunderland made a few changes, brought on Roberts and Sims and Embleton, and finally got the goal. Probably deserving. Bit frustrating we couldn't push on to get the second. That's about it. Bree again getting bonus.
Yep.
Just Bree doing what Bree does. That's about it, Angus.
So what would you say to people who are looking at, or who have been looking at Luton for follow the leader in 20?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because with the Morris yellow card, he also went off with a knock, but I'm not sure. That's probably just because we got Cornick and Jerome. They're not taking any risks. Morris is probably the second best option after Bree. And we've mentioned a few times the third option. I know you've got Potts.
Yeah.
It's not a terrible option. I think he's going to play. We've mentioned Campbell as well, just because he'll probably play 2 games, and you never know, he might get the odd assist. I think there's better teams, but if you've got Bree and Morris, then your team's set up. I think you have to risk that he's going to play unless he gets booked in the next game, and just try and find a third player.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, I have Bree and Potts. I was strongly considering Luton as one of my follow the leader teams. But quite apart from anything else, Morris not managing to pick up his 5th booking has put me off.
He was arguing with the ref all the time he was on. He's doing his best.
The ref should have shown a more no nonsense approach there. But yeah, I think, like you say, I think they've got sort of decent fixtures in the double as well, at least on paper. So if people are set up to go with Luton, I certainly don't hate it.
Yeah, I'd probably edge towards Potts as the third.
Yeah, like you say, I think it's just that reliability factor.
Yeah.
we'll move on from them. We've got Cardiff 1, Rotherham 0.
I'm looking forward to this, Angus.
Yeah, so I told Dan I've done a little bit of I've had a little bit of a running project the last couple of games on Rotherham, but I'll touch on Cardiff first. So no Callum Robinson for them, obviously. So they had an attack of O'Dowda, Ojo, and Harris. I think in general this sort of back four, the sort of 4-3-3 is better for them. Ng started at centre back. Sang continued at right back, although he was then replaced at half time by Romeo, who now back, and he actually ended up with the assist for Jadon Philogene goal, which was very well taken after beating a couple of defenders, and then placing it into the back of the net. I'm not sure you'd be rushing to go with Cardiff assets. They do have a double, and they do have quite a good double. Well, at least half of it. They play Hull at home. So, I mean, maybe if you wanted to go with one of the defenders, I could understand that, but otherwise, I don't think I'd be looking at Cardiff. So Rotherham. A lot of people are on Rotherham assets. I've sort of been saying in a couple of sort of group chats and whatever that I've been worried about the trend with Rotherham in terms of conceding chances. So I did a little look back. I've only done their last 4 games, which I know sort of some people will look at sample size. Some people will look at sort of that's very convenient. I know that I did look at 1 or 2 games before, and this trend is not necessarily new. When people are looking at teams who could move up or down the table, I think it's worth sort of looking at this with Rotherham. So in the last 4 games, they've played Stoke, Hull, Coventry, and Cardiff. Not teams you think of as like real attacking teams. Shots conceded in those 4 games: 29, 19, 21, 19. XG conceded in those 4 games: 1.99, 3.24, 2.18, 2.22. So it would be over 2 XG every game against those teams, except it was, at least where I looked, which was Infogol, it was 1.99 to Stoke. So if you combine those 4 games, that's 88 shots faced and 9.63 XG if you prefer sort of looking at that. Those are big numbers. Those are really big numbers. Now, it won't necessarily be a surprise to those people who are on Victor Johansson on Jeepers Keepers in 17, where 2 of those games came. But, like, it's a concern. And, like, I repeat, those 4 teams they played in that, Stoke, Hull, Coventry, and Cardiff, that are putting up those sorts of numbers. That's worrying.
10 big chances conceded.
Yeah, like, you know, for those people who are on defensive assets, you know, Johansson will get you save points, although we know that in this, unlike sort of you can end up in FPL, save points, unless they're penalty saves, won't really add up to bonus. And, you know, I'd be worried about them conceding more goals. I mean, in those games, they conceded none to Stoke, which is perfect in terms of the numbers Stoke put up, that they didn't score a goal. 4 to Hull. Was it 2 to Coventry and only 1 to Cardiff in this game, which speaks to sort of, we're talking about not necessarily the best attacking teams. And the 4 to Hull, that was without Estupiñán as well. So, you know, if you've got defensive assets from them, I'd be worried about playing them. I'm not necessarily saying they can't change this trend, or that they're going to, you know, drop right down the table. But, like, you know, there's a pattern there. There's a pretty strong pattern there. And so unless you're just going to chase save points from your Hansen every game, probably the defensive assets at the very least, I'd be looking to shift on. I'd possibly be looking to shift them on anyway. But looking at those numbers, I also think I'd be looking at attacks that are playing Rotherham. We've talked earlier in the season about certain teams to target. Those numbers, and you can look at them for the games that come before, they're probably, there's probably a bit of a trend there. It's something you can look to target at this point, is the other thing that I sort of, did this to sort of make the point of, is that you can sort of target them at this point. I don't have much else to add in terms of the actual personnel or whatever, but I just thought that's something I've been looking at recently, and I just thought it was worth sharing because, it paints a lovely picture. Do you have anything to add on either of these teams, Dan?
What I'll say is that if you've got Barlasser, I think he's a decent bench option,
Yeah.
but nothing more than that, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not rushing to sell him, but sort of the defensive ones are sort of been potentially looking elsewhere. Next one we've got is Bristol City 1, Swansea 1. Dan, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, and one of the games that I don't have too much to say. Bristol City, no Atkinson, Naismith or Vyman in the squad. Swansea, Patterson and Manning were back on the bench, which is good. And Bristol City took the lead through Conway, Nalky Wells assist. Manning came on at half time, and then so did later on Patterson and Chan. They finally got a goal back through Chan. I don't have too much. We've mentioned before with Bristol City that it's time to sell their assets, really. Swansea, we've mentioned before, Manning's back, so that's probably good. Maybe you can go for Obafemi or Pirro, and then because I think that was the last game for Pirro, was it?
Yeah, last game of the suspension.
Problem is, who do you go for your third? They got pretty decent fixtures against Wigan and Birmingham in that double, but I don't know anyone who's on many assets from Swansea. Might have the odd one, but not more than one. I don't know if you've got anything to add. Probably more on Swansea than Bristol City.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the main thing was Martin slightly less of a liar this week when he promised that Manning and Patterson would be back in the squad, definitely back in the squad, and this time they were.
Is he in your good books again now, Angus?
No.
No. Okay.
Manning obviously came on at half time, so I think if you have him and you're looking ahead potentially to 20, that would be encouraging that he straight back in with 45 minutes, got the half clean sheet as well. So I'd be fine with him, and if you've got someone like an Obafemi, I think that's fine as well. But yeah, they wouldn't necessarily appeal to me. So even though they've been in relatively good form, Bristol City, yeah, I think it's a move on if you've still got them. Move on though to Hull 0, Blackburn 1. We thought that it was going to be a great game for Blackburn assets. You had the one goal for Smodix. Wharton with the assist. Brereton Diaz went close a couple of times but didn't get a goal. So no return for him. I think he would have been quite a popular armband option against Hull this weekend. So obviously that would be disappointing for a few people. I think they're sort of a very solid team, as they keep showing, but people aren't really going to be on their assets at the moment, I don't think, aside from Brereton Diaz, and they'll probably be looking to move him on with them having no double in 20 as well. So I don't have much else to add on these two. Anything from you, Dan?
No, just 4 wins in a row for Blackburn now. I've mentioned before, I like Sammy Smodix as an option. But like you said, nothing before game week 20 for either of these two.
Yeah. So we'll just cover the last game, which is Huddersfield 1, Millwall 0. I'd sort of said to people about the great sort of run that Millwall had, and particularly for the defensive assets, and there was no way, I sort of sarcastically said there was no way that they could ruin that, and they conceded a goal to what was definitely a cross. Obviously, they're missing a couple of players at the moment, and they'd Cresswell come back into the defence with Hutchinson out, injured. But yeah, I mean, I'm not we'll cover Millwall closer to their bizarre split game week 21 double.
The longest ever game week.
Yeah. Huddersfield, I don't think you're looking to buy at this point. I know they do have a double, but I'm not sure who you'd really want at this point.
Didn't Thomas do the good thing and get himself
Yes,
five
Thomas
yellows
did get
for it?
himself his 5th yellow. So if you're on him, I'd like you to explain that to me. But B, yeah, he's obviously now in good position for game week 20, having got himself his 5th booking. So yeah, that's all the games. So we'll move on to the questions you have sent us on Twitter. These are in no particular order, they're just how they show up for me. The first one is from Man on Martin, who has asked, have your plans for game week 20 been influenced by the week just gone? What do you think about changing course now for extra hits? Worth it or too reactionary given the nature of the league? So what do you think on that, Dan?
So a few weeks ago, I made a decision. I think it's 2 weeks ago now. My teams were going to be Sheffield United, Watford, and QPR. Now, at the time, I wasn't thrilled with picking Sheffield United, but the way my team was set up, I thought they were a good option. Plus, after the game week, I'm more happy keeping Sheffield United than other players.
Yeah.
I did change with Watford after they played Luton, just because I think we've seen numerous times they can just turn up and win 3 or 4-0. The upside's massive for them, and QPR pretty similar to Sheffield United. I'm happy to keep Chair and maybe a defender afterwards. So although it's probably the best boost in this set, I also don't want to muck my team too much because you're bringing in 3 players from the teams. Like I don't want to muck up the team drastically, but I want players from teams I'm happy to hold for maybe a while, or at least 2 of them for a while.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing for me as well. So my plans have changed a little bit because I was looking at. I knew I was going to have Watford and QPR. I'm already on the 3 from them, pending Kamara potentially getting a booking. And most likely third for me was going to be Luton. I also had Coventry as a potential backup there as well. I don't really like either of them. Morris not getting his 5th booking is sort of put me off a bit because he was likely to be the third one for me, and I don't really want to be buying someone like him with that booking sort of looming. Plus, the other thing for me that probably has changed, and I sort of overlooked them a little bit, so it's not necessarily solely on this past weekend, is Sheffield United, which is where I can basically take 1 hit and get 3 across the 2 game weeks and get 3 of them in. Yeah. So it's quite easy for me as well at this point, having already got 2 of the teams locked in. And like I said, it was probably a bit poor preparation for me because they are a team that I do like. So that's where my plan has changed. But I'm in position having already set up 2 of the 3 triples, where I can do that for like minor damage in terms of hits. So it helps me be able to make that sort of drastic move where I'm like, I'm going to get 3 from a team where I don't have any. Where I understand for some people, if they're having to, already take hits, for example, to get players in from multiple teams, you can't necessarily then introduce a whole new team.
Yeah. See, for me, I think I've worked it out. I'll probably, if there's not any like yellow
Yeah,
card or things like or injuries, I'll probably only need to take a -4 over the next 2 game
yeah.
weeks
So
because the
yeah,
previous 2 game weeks I've taken -4s. So I'm near enough in a position I'm happy with. Um, I still think it's just what your team is set up to
yeah,
be, because as long as you're happy to have, say, your number one team, which is going to get the biggest multiplier, your third team, it's not a massive gain. It's only zero point 0.5 on what you would normally get.
yeah,
So if you're set up with it, I don't know, say your Coventry, probably, it's probably worth just playing them, because then one, you might want them for the further
yeah,
uh, doublers down the line. Plus, it's only zero point 0.5 more.
yeah. I think that's the thing. It depends if you're bringing in a. I think that's the other thing that we haven't necessarily covered. That now that you say it is important is like if it's a team that you want to use, particularly the top multiplier on, or maybe the second multiplier, then maybe you're slightly more aggressive with your hits. If it's that third team where it's just 1.5 times, like
Yeah,
that's where, like you say, someone like a Coventry, it's fine. You're not like, do you really want to take aggressive hits to get that third team? Not necessarily. You might want to. You might look at it and say these 3 assets are great, and so I want them anyway. In which case, sure,
yeah,
go for it. But like, if it's just going to be for that third team, I'd be stressing out about it slightly less. Where if it's one of these teams that you really want for one of those top multipliers, then yeah, do what you need to do.
yeah. But also, the Sheffield United, they played West Brom. West Brom are bottom of the league.
Yeah,
They hadn't won in the 6 games before that. So although I've had them, but that's because I punted on McBurney before,
yes,
so I was already set up for it. I'm still with the view of making sure you have, if your team's set up for a team, probably better to go for that now. And then is your team going to look good afterwards as well?
yeah. I think it's the case of like not ignoring sort of what's going to come afterwards. I mean, it's part of the thing for me where, like you say, I might sell the odd one from like QPR, but like for example, triple Watford, I'm perfectly fine owning triple Watford afterwards. You know, even double Sheffield United or QPR, I'm perfectly fine owning that afterwards. So that plays a role. So you know, I wouldn't necessarily be going sort of punting all of the Coventry assets out of your team when before too long you're probably going to want Coventry players in again. So
Yeah.
um,
Even someone like Luton, like we meant, if people do have Bree and Morris,
yeah,
they're fine
then
to
go for
hold.
it. Yeah.
Then go for it.
Um, uh, Next question we've got. This was mentioned elsewhere. Obviously there was supposed to be 3 of us, but there are. Auto Reclose, Darren has asked us, which one of these are each of you? Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, and Graham Souness. So I will say I was quite offended when I think it was
I,
Darren said that I was Graham Souness.
I
Um,
was quite happy with, I got picked as Gary Neville.
yeah.
I take that one.
uh, I think I said I didn't necessarily want to be any of them, but I was not happy at being Graham Souness. So Jamie can be Graham Souness because he's not here. So
Yeah.
he gets Graham Souness. Um,
Do
I
you
mean,
want
I'll
to be
take
the
Carragher.
person who spits at people or driving past or? in the
Oh
car.
God. Again, I'm not sure I really want to be either of them.
I was quite happy to be Neville.
Yeah,
That's probably his like me, to be honest.
yeah. I mean, I'll take one of those two. I'll take whichever one's left. So I guess in this case, I'm
You could have
Carragher. Yeah.
Carragher.
Um, as long as I'm not Souness, that's the main thing. FPL Commander has asked. He said, "Giles is such a disappointment. Is he good enough to be a hold for double game week 20, or can I lose him so I have enough budget to factor in João Pedro as well?" I think you've kind of answered the question with the last part there. It depends what selling him enables you to do. If selling him enables you to get someone like João Pedro, then sure, go for it.
This is pretty much the move I'll be doing.
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing. If you're selling him for the sake of selling him, I'd think twice about it. Like if you're selling him because you're disappointed with the points he's got you or hasn't got you, I'd think twice about it. If you're set up to go Middlesbrough on follow the leader, and you'd have to change things around by selling him, I'd think twice about it. But if it funds you something good, then yeah, by all means, move him on.
See, if I had Jones, I'd be more reluctant to sell than
Yeah,
Giles.
yeah. I think that's sort of Joe, like we've said, Jones playing higher, Giles playing deeper. So I do think that sort of potentially affects those two. But like I say, I do think you've probably answered it with the last part of your question in terms of if it's getting you something like João Pedro, then yeah, go for it. FPL Frustration has asked us, which players would you consider for the triple boost in game week 20?
Do you know, I haven't even thought of this. I've been so focused on
I feel like
follow
you
the
had
lead.
this question recently, but I might be
So,
wrong on that. I think it's Sar, Chair, and Njai. There you go.
yeah, I don't hate that. Maybe Piro or Bafemi.
Yeah, I mean they have
Just for the
a
upside.
decent double, so
And it's only bringing one of them in, isn't it?
yeah, maybe sort of Pedro or Davis as one of the options, and as you said, maybe someone like Bree.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are probably the best ones for the triple, I think. Next question we've got is from Shibidabidabid. It's a best Watford defender other than Kamara, as he is on 4 yellows. I think, as I said, it has to be Troost-Ekong at this point, because he's the only one who's playing and not on 4 yellows.
I'd rather just have Kamara for 1 week, I think, for one game.
Yeah, but yeah, if Kamara being on 4 yellows puts you off, then I think it has to be Troost-Ekong, given that Sierralta's also on 4 yellows, and Mario Gaspar is currently behind Dan Gosling.
No one should be behind Dan Gosling. Not at right back, anyway.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's the fact that it's at right back. Forever QPR, Pontus has asked us, who will grab the most Gaffr points during the double game week? Jones or Bree?
It's hard to
I
go
think it's Bree.
against Bree.
I think it's Bree. They both play Blackpool. And then you've got Bree against Stoke or Jones against Bristol City. I'm going Bree. I know you're reluctant to with that in terms of Luton.
It's just because Jones is playing right wing.
Yeah.
They're not both playing defend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
back.
think Jones is a bad option. Like, I'm not saying, oh,
No.
yeah, Bree's going to score 20 and Jones is going to score 4 or whatever. But it's just like, I
If
think
this was
Bree
Bree against Laird, it'd be no contest.
But yeah, I think
Gaffr
Bree will
wise.
score more. So So yeah, I'm going with that. FPL Buddy has asked us any other teams to look at for the Game Week 20 double other than QPR, Coventry, and Watford for the follow the leader boost. He also says, and how are you guys feeling sitting at the bottom of Thursday Night Wars table? I think we're not surprised, is the thing I would say on that, with how the pod team has gone recently. I don't think we're surprised at that. But yeah, I think, to be honest, we've sort of said, like, depending on the setup, most of the teams are fine for follow the leader. And you can find some positives, but in terms of he said, other than QPR, Coventry, and Watford, Middlesbrough, Sheffield United,
Luton.
Swansea, Luton. I think they're all options. So yeah. Rob Pick has asked us, buying a player for follow the leader that is on 4 yellows, completely mental or a glorious adrenaline-filled gamble?
I'm at the point. I'm at the point where I'm just going to pick who I want.
I think some of Kamara's recent scores make me think that even if he plays one game, that might be fine.
Yeah, like you could worry about it.
It would be Troost-Ekong. It would have to be Troost-Ekong.
Troost-Ekong in, and he'll get sent off or injured 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
I try not to worry about it.
No.
Remember, for example, Kamara plays Cardiff this game week.
Yeah.
And you can keep Kamara afterwards. It's not just about this game week.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's potentially high stakes for the follow the leader to have a player on 4 yellows, but I'd also think about the possibility of him playing the 2 games and not getting booked or whatever, and then you've got him for 2 games. So there is also that possibility. I mean, I point to the Premier League, both in FPL and the Sky game, with Gabriel Jesus and William Saliba from Arsenal. People have been concerned about them being on 4 yellows and either not gone for them or whatever. And they've played every game since people started worrying about that. And so if you've had them, great. And so there's that same sort of thing with the likes of Kamara. He also might just play, Cardiff and then the double, in which case you've had him for 3 games and it's great.
I remember, I think it was last season, Pelly Ruddock for Luton. He got something like 4 yellow cards in the first 7 games. Most of them were for like time wasting or kicking the ball away. And then he didn't get booked until after the thing. So it's like Colton Morris. Most of his are for talking.
Yeah. So if you've got if you've got a referee that's more patient to that, then you're fine essentially.
It'll be if Kamara's is for like tackling or things like that. That's a bit more of a worry. But I'm at the point where I just can't be bothered to worry about it. I'm just going to pick him.
If he gets through the double without getting booked, then the yellows reset.
But it's also not an issue. You can just bench him for another player.
Yeah. But even so, if he gets through the double without being booked, then you don't have to worry about it. The yellows have reset at that point.
He might get booked in the last game.
That would be fine if he gets booked in the second game of the double, because they'll reset after the first game of the double for most teams.
And also he'll be playing in the game, so you just got to get through 2. I'm picking him.
Yeah, I think the only concern would be if he got booked in this midweek, but even then, like we've said, it's not necessarily worth. For some of these other players, you might think twice about it, who are on 4 yellows, but for someone like Kamara, I wouldn't sort of stress about it.
So I'm currently thinking of Watford as the highest, like the captain. What would be interesting is, say I've got Kamara and I know he's going to miss one of the games. Do I drop him down and multiply? That's when it gets interesting.
Yeah, like what do you do with it then? I think from my personal point of view, because obviously I've thought about this, I'm still planning to play Watford as the top one. And I think even if Kamara was only going to play one of them, I think the multiplier on Sarr and Pedro would be enough to justify the fact that I'd only be getting one game from Kamara.
Yeah.
But faced with it come the actual week, I might change my mind on that. But it might all be for nothing, and he might not even get the booking. So, so we'll move on. Petri Annanen has asked us, trending teams for double game week 20. Which ones are getting hotter? Which ones not?
None of them are getting hotter. They lose or win.
Yeah, I think it's
the championship.
The closest one to a team that's getting hotter for double game week 20 is someone like Birmingham.
But it's probably Burnley, but they don't double.
That's what I mean in terms of the doublers. The closest one to
doublers.
Like really getting hotter is someone like Birmingham. And in terms of colder, like Middlesbrough.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, the problem is that, but that's where it's thing. Their trending is getting worse, but they've got the new manager in and they have a great double. So even that, it's like, swings and roundabouts. You can sort of talk about positive there. I guess the other thing I'd say in terms of colder is like Hull, because, aside from the odd game, they've sort of been losing quite a lot. So, you wouldn't want to go with them. Renarid9 has asked us a question. Don't know why he needs to ask us a question when he's about 70 points clear at the top, but
he could change his whole team for hits. He'll be fine.
He said, what to do with Coventry assets? If you're tripled up already ahead of game week 20, do you just trust their ground issues will be sorted out in time? If not, does it put you off a QPR triple up too, given the fixture to follow? So obviously, Coventry play QPR in 21. As we've said, I think they're already working on solutions. It sounds like most likely they will be ground sharing with Walsall. And the EFL is very motivated to help them out in this. So I would expect to see them play. I wouldn't be worried about that. And as we've said, I think if you're already on the triple up and you're already set up for that, I think you could do much worse than using Coventry on follow the leader. I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, Dan.
No, I think you covered it pretty much.
So we'll move on. We've got FPL Trini. Nick has asked, O'Hare and Willock now viable options for game week 20?
O'Hare, I think. I want to see Willock play.
Yeah, I was about to say it's tough to say Willock when he still hasn't played a game since getting injured. O'Hare, I think, is worth a punt.
I like the O'Hare punt. Yeah.
FPL Irons asked us, if you hosted a podcast about a game with 200 active managers and weren't in the top 100, should you be considered a massive fraud? So a couple of us have already taken issue with his characterization that there's only 200 active managers. In part because I know there's active managers that don't listen to this podcast, and we get that sort of listenership each pod. So there must be more active managers than that. No. In part because, as I've argued before, we're helping too many people out, sort of. So the chances that they're ahead of us are even stronger.
Well, also, compared to last year, I'm having a great season. I'm just inside the top 150.
Yeah.
I was about 700 last year, so.
Yeah, so it's all fine. Andy, FPL Teach Mode, has asked us, is it better to play the game weeks in front of you and take hits to get a strong follow the leader in 20, or to get players in before? This week was a killer for follow the leader preppers. I disagree, particularly as I bought Joao Pedro as prep for it, and he scored a goal and got 11 points. So clearly you just prepped getting the wrong players. Do you think there's something to be said, though, Dan, for just playing, for example, just playing game week 19 and then worrying about game week 20? Or do you think at this point it has to be geared towards game week 20?
It depends how much you got to do, I think. I like as mentioned, I've been taking -4, so I've gradually been getting there. So my plan is at the minute to probably take a -4 going into this game week, and then just using my free transfer on the last one. Obviously, unless there's a yellow card or something like that I've got to sort out, or an injury. I got away with it this week with Pookie, sold him, managed to just get enough points through other players. It's tricky. I think it just try and be sensible. See, I got rid of Pookie to fund Saar,
Yeah.
and they had Wigan away. So I don't know. I think you've got to plan for it because the upside for it is massive, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also an issue with the question, and I genuinely don't mean to pick on Andy, but talking about the game weeks, playing the game weeks ahead of us rather than planning for game week 20. Well, the next game week is game week 19, and then it's game week 20. So unless you're specifically looking at something for game week 19, then you should be making moves towards game week 20. So obviously, I've taken a -4 this week. I only have to take one more -4 with my new plan, and then a free transfer barring injuries. So I'm in quite a fortunate position at this point. But as I say, we're at a point where it's basically upon us now, game week 20, and so unless you're really taking a 1 week punt and you have the luxury to do that, then it's going to be towards game week 20 anyway.
But it's I didn't know if Andy's was more the view of maybe waiting, so maybe not taking hits this week, but then just take maybe a -8 next week.
Yeah, and that's
Maybe
the thing. I
that's
think if
the
you're waiting for something, like we've said, potentially waiting to see until after game week 19 what the situation is with Keenan Davis, with Chris Willock, with another game week of information on Callum O'Hare, for example. That's fine, totally understandable. But if it's making other moves that aren't towards your follow the leader in 20, then no, I can't support that. Particularly, like I say, where we're so close. Where if it had been a couple of weeks ago and you wanted to sort of, say you wanted to bring in a player for 18, 19, that would have been slightly different. Where now that we're going into 19, I think most if not all of it has to be towards 20 at this point.
Yeah. I just think maybe he's thinking of maybe doing his free transfer, but then maybe taking like a -8.
I think it's generous to suggest that Andy has a plan.
Well, he's doing better than us,
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah. Just make it up as he goes along, wings it. Ends
he didn't
up
win it last year.
top 3 or whatever. So yeah. So that's all the questions. We will be back on Thursday on Spaces to sort of we'll probably cover some of the goings on from game week 19 and sort of have a final look ahead to game week 20.
The big question will be who has picked up their 5th yellow card.
Yeah, Kamara will be booked.
Morris booked.
Chair will have got injured.
Oh, don't say that.
McBurney will have got injured, and it will all be chaos.
I'll be taking a -12 to play it.
To get Billy Sharp.
Oh no. Probably would.
Well, yeah, given that he'd be the only one left, that would actually work. But yeah, so we're back on Spaces on Thursday, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to discuss. So join us then. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and we will speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.